Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at a really interesting book, Lord of the Flies by William Golding. And we're going beyond just the plot. We're going beyond just the story. We're really going to be digging into its message, its themes about human nature and how relevant they are even today.
Yeah, it's amazing how this book still holds up. And one of the things that strikes me is how Golding uses the setting, right? This tropical island, like you imagine this beautiful lagoon.
Paradise.
Exactly, paradise. But then you have this scar, the plane wreckage. It's like this reminder that there's something else there.
That's so perfect underneath, right?
Right. From the start, he's kind of challenging our ideas of paradise.
Yeah, and then you have these boys, right? You've got Ralph, Piggy, Jack, Simon. They all represent different parts of us, I think. At first, they're all about order, let's get rescued. But that conch shell, that symbol of democracy, it's pretty fragile, don't you think?
Incredibly fragile. I mean, that's what Golding is exploring, isn't it? How easily civilization can break down. The conch represents rules, order, but it doesn't take much for those things to start crumbling.
And nobody embodies that crumble like Jack, right? I mean, he goes from choir boy to this, ruthless hunter. I mean, the face paint, the obsession with the pigs. It's scary how quickly he sheds those rules.
It's like he becomes this primal figure, shedding civilization literally and figuratively. And the whole idea of the beast, it's not just some monster lurking in the jungle. It's so much more than that.
It's inside them, isn't it?
Exactly. Golding's genius is in how he makes the beast, this metaphor for the darkness, inside the boys themselves. I mean, think about the Lord of the Flies, that pig's head on a stick.
Chilling.
Yeah. And Simon's interaction with it. It's like the pig's head is speaking this truth they don't want to hear.
And they kill him for it. It's heartbreaking.
Tragic. It's the silencing of reason, of understanding. And it paves the way for things to get even worse.
Yeah. And then Piggy's death, too, right? They smash his glasses, which is more than just violence, right?
Right. It's the destruction of intellect, of reason. Piggy represented that. And without him, things really spiral out of control.
And the irony of the ending, the naval officer who rescues them, he has no idea the horror that's unfolded. He compares it to some boy's adventure book. It's almost like civilization doesn't even understand the darkness it creates. Yeah. Like, is anyone really paying attention?
Right. It makes you wonder if the island is just a microcosm of the world. Are those beasts everywhere, not just in some far-off jungle?
That's what's so disturbing about Lord of the Flies. And so brilliant. Golding forces us to ask these really uncomfortable questions about ourselves.
And the thing is, it was published decades ago, but it feels more relevant than ever. I mean, look at the world today. The spread of misinformation, the rise of these strongman figures. It's like those same tribal instincts Golding wrote about. They're playing out all over again.
It's like our whole world is becoming an island, isn't it?
In a way, yeah. Where we isolate ourselves in these echo chambers, where fear and anger are easily manipulated. We got to be careful.
Absolutely. We really need to dig into some specific examples from the book to illustrate all this. Like how Golding actually shows us that descent into savagery, those turning points where the boys make decisions that lead them down this dark path.
Yes, let's break down those moments and see what they tell us about ourselves. It's interesting because it's not like things just fall apart immediately, right? It's not like they crash on this island and instantly become savages.
No. There's this real attempt, especially at the beginning, to be civilized.
Yeah, they try to create some kind of order.
Yeah, elect Ralph as the leader, and they're like, let's get rescued, let's build shelters, keep that signal fire going.
But even then, you can already see the cracks.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that first assembly when the little kid, the little Calaton with the birthmark, he talks about the beastie.
Right.
And even though the older boys kind of dismiss it, you can tell it. It plants a seed of fear.
Fear is a powerful thing.
It is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It can really distort our perceptions and make us act in ways that we wouldn't normally.
And that's where Jack comes in, right?
Exactly. He sees that fear and he uses it.
He knows how to exploit it.
He becomes the one who promises protection.
Yeah.
The strongman figure, follow me and I'll keep you safe from the beast.
Which is interesting because the more he hunts, the more he kind of embodies that beast himself.
Oh, absolutely. There's this transformation that happens.
The face paint, the chanting.
It's like he's shedding his humanity, becoming something primal, and the other boys, especially the younger ones, they're drawn to it.
It's a very primal thing, isn't it? That need for protection, that need for a strong leader, even if that leader is, well, a little bit scary.
Right, and that scene where they kill the first pig.
Oh my gosh.
Disturbing on so many levels, right?
The turning point.
Yeah, it's not just kids playing at hunting anymore.
Yeah.
There's this real savagery to it, this bloodlust.
It's ritualistic almost, the chanting the blood.
And then that pig's head on a stick,
Yeah.
the Lord of the Flies.
That's the image I always think of.
It's this potent symbol of the evil that's taking root on the island. And the fact that Simon's the only one who really understands what it represents.
That's why his death is so devastating, isn't it?
It's more than just a death. It's the silencing of reason, of empathy, and without Simon, things really start to unravel.
Yeah, and then you have Piggy's glasses getting stolen, which is so symbolic, right?
Absolutely. It's not just an act of bullying. It's like they're stealing his ability to see clearly, to think critically.
They're literally taking away his vision.
Right. And it's Jack consolidating his power. Without Piggy, without that intellectual counterbalance, it's all downhill from there.
And his death, the conch shattering, it's like all hope for order is lost.
It's like the last vestiges of civilization just collapsing.
And that image of Ralph being hunted by Jack's tribe.
Oh, it's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
The boy who was once the leader, reduced to prey.
It really drives home the point that things have gone horribly wrong.
And then, the irony of the ending, right? This naval officer shows up, representing the adult world, the very civilization they were trying to signal to in Salad. He has no clue what's happened.
It's almost funny if it weren't so tragic.
Like he compares it to a kid's adventure book, completely oblivious to the horror that's transpired.
It's like, does civilization even recognize its own failures?
That's the question Golding leaves us with. And it's a question that's just as relevant today as it was back then.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about all the ways that systems fail, the people in power who are blind to the suffering they cause. It's like Lord of the Flies is playing out all over again, just on a larger scale.
Exactly. We need to be aware of those patterns. We need to be willing to call out injustice, to speak truth to power, even when it's difficult.
Because if we don't, well, then we risk repeating the same mistakes.
And those mistakes have very real consequences.
You know, there's a line in the book that always gives me chills. Maybe there is a beast. Maybe it's only us.
Chilling, but also so true.
It's like Golding is forcing us to confront that darkness within ourselves, to acknowledge that we're all capable of savagery.
And that recognition is crucial. It's the first step towards choosing a different path.
But it's not easy, is it?
No, it's not. It requires constant vigilance, constant effort.
We have to actively choose compassion, choose empathy, choose to see the humanity in others, even when it's hard.
It's especially when it's hard.
And the thing about Lord of the Flies is it makes you wonder what you would do in that situation.
It really does make you question yourself, doesn't it?
It makes you appreciate the fragility of the things we take for granted. Order, civility, kindness.
And maybe that's the most important takeaway from this book, that those things are not guaranteed. We have to fight for them every day.
We have to be willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's unpopular, even when it's dangerous.
Because the alternative is unthinkable. We've seen where that path leads.
Yeah, Golding shows us that very clearly.
And it's not a pretty picture.
It's amazing to me how people can read Lord of the Flies and come away with such different interpretations. Like, is Golding saying all humans are inherently evil, or is it more about the systems we create, you know? What did you find most challenging about this book?
You know what's so fascinating? It's that Golding doesn't give us easy answers, does he? He holds up this mirror and makes us confront our own complexities. I mean, honestly, the things that really struck me, really stayed with me, were those deaths. Simon and Piggy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's hard to read those parts, isn't it?
It's brutal, and it's not just the violence of it. It's what those deaths represent, like the loss of innocence, the crushing of hope and reason, just gone.
It's like even when you're trying to build something good, that potential for violence, it's always there, underneath.
Yeah. And it's not just the physical violence that gets to me. It's how Jack manipulates the others, how he twists their fear, uses it to gain power.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it, isn't it? That psychological manipulation. Jack understands that fear makes people vulnerable. And they'll follow anyone who promises them safety, even if it means embracing cruelty.
And that feels so relevant today, doesn't it? I mean, the way fear and anger can be so easily exploited, especially with how media works these days.
Absolutely. Think about how quickly misinformation can spread online. People end up in these echo chambers, only hearing things that reinforce their fears and biases. It's like those tribal instincts Golding wrote about. They're amplified in this digital age we're living in.
So, if Lord of the Flies is this warning about the darkness inside us, what can we actually do about it? Like, how do we prevent the Lord of the Flies from taking over, in our own lives and in the world around us?
That's the big question, right? And honestly, I don't think Golding gives us a step-by-step guide, but I do think he points to a few crucial things, like We have to think critically, question what we hear, resist the urge to just go along with the crowd, especially when it feels like things are heading in a dangerous direction.
So we need to be more like Piggy then.
In a way, yeah, we need to hold on to reason, to
Right.
logic, but we also need empathy, right? The willingness to listen to those who are different from us.
Compassion.
Exactly.
Huh.
And it's not easy. It takes real effort to be self-aware, to challenge our own assumptions, but it's worth it.
That ending of the book, I don't know, it's so sad, but then there's that little bit of hope when Ralph is rescued.
It's like Golding is saying, even after all that darkness, there's still a chance to come back,
Hmm.
to be civilized again.
But Ralph cries, doesn't he? Like he's mourning for Piggy, yeah, but also for this loss of innocence, this realization of what humans are capable of.
He's seen the darkness,
Yeah.
and it's changed him. But
Yeah.
maybe that knowledge can lead to something better. You know, like fuel a commitment to making the world a different place, a place where those same mistakes aren't repeated.
Lord of the Flies, it's not exactly a fun read, but it stays with you. Makes you think.
It's a powerful book. It forces us to ask tough questions about ourselves and the world we live in. And I think that's the mark of truly great literature, isn't it? It doesn't give us easy answers, but it changes how we see things.
Well, I think we've done a pretty thorough deep dive here. If William Golding were listening in, I bet he'd be impressed. And maybe a little terrified that his book is still so relevant.
I think he'd be glad that we're still thinking about these ideas, that we haven't given up hope, that we're still fighting against that Lord of the Flies within us.
And maybe that's the most important message to take away from all this, that we have a choice. We can give in to the darkness or we can fight for something better.
And every choice we make, no matter how small, it matters. They shape who we are, the communities we build, the world we leave behind. So let's remember those lessons from Lord of the Flies. Let's stay aware of the darkness within us and choose to build a world that's a little bit more human, a little bit more just, a little bit kinder.
It's a world worth fighting for. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.